Hey guys, and welcome to episode 118 of Meeple to Meeple. It's Passion in Perth. That's right. I am going to be talking with a friend of mine from Perth, Australia. This is an exciting episode. I'm so happy to have you joining me. As always, I remain PJ. We had a conversation over the weekend about why I remain PJ. We were in Nashville at a gaming convention, and people were like, why do you remain PJ? Did you at one time stop being PJ? And to be honest with you, I've always been PJ. I don't know why that happened. So there you are. There's the story. But today, that's enough about me. Today, we've got my friend Ahmad from Perth, and he's going to talk about the gaming community in Australia and everything. Ahmed, how are you?
PJ, thank you so much for having me on the show. It is 9:06 nighttime p.m. my side, opposite of yours. So
Right.
slightly sleepy and a bit tired, but it's all good. I think it's one of the exciting things about the board game community. I think these days is that there's the
Yeah.
ability to just connect with pretty much anyone anywhere, despite
Right.
our industry being so focused on the physical in-person presence.
Right. Absolutely. So it is 8:06 a.m. here in central Illinois. So this was a fun logistical trying to coordinate, but we got you on. This is amazing. So let's start. Why don't you just tell me a little bit about like where you are and how did you get into the modern board gaming community?
Sure. So I'm currently based in Perth, Australia. It's a little, a less well-known part of Australia. Everybody always thinks about Sydney and Melbourne over the East Coast,
Right.
which, by the way, is at least 2 and sometimes 3 hours ahead, depending on daylight saving. So we're a bit
Wow.
closer to, I guess, in that sense, Southeast Asia and Oceania in terms of regional proximity. And I started my journey into this industry at the end of December 2020. So what happened then was that I was working as a general manager for a local agency, and I was looking after around 70 people globally, and it was a very stressful job. And I still do have young kids, three of them, and it was a remote job, so it just piles on. You can see where this is
Okay.
going.
Right.
And it basically came to a point where I found it too stressful and I needed a break from it. But to be honest, it was actually my dream job. I loved what I was doing. I really enjoyed it. Loved the team, a fantastic, setup and everything. But it's one of those things where you just know it was time to move on. And
Sure.
I actually took a while to sort of recover, do a bit of self-care, explored some avenues in terms of what I might be doing next. But one thing that I knew for sure was that I didn't want to do something that had me spend time in front of the screen the whole day. That was the
Sure.
biggest thing, right?
Right. I think that's a struggle across the planet. We
That's
hear
right.
that. We
That's
hear
right.
that all the
That's right.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was another thing, which was that I spoke a lot with my wife. Obviously, as you know, I've been married to her for a very long time. I mean, I think we're coming to 14, almost 15 years now. And
Hey, congratulations.
thank you.
So today, as of at the time that we're recording,
Yeah.
my wife and I are celebrating our 16th wedding anniversary today.
Wow. Congratulations
Yeah.
to you.
Hey,
There we go.
I know. So make sure you say a prayer for her because
Right.
she's got to put up with me.
I get what you mean, brother. And I think one of the things, if you have someone who you can, confide with and non-judgmental and all that, was that it was a bit of a career counseling moment. We were discussing like, hey, what should I be doing next? Based on my skills, what I've done before, and all that. And one thing that sort of crossed our minds, and it wasn't just for me, but for her as well, is that we sort of wanted to do something that was going to be long term in terms of the impact. And don't get me wrong, my
Sure.
wife is a physio. What she does is amazing in terms of impacting, the community,
Right.
the people she is helping to get better and recover. And of course, even my job in terms of the corporate sense, benefiting clients and all that. But we wanted to, I guess, see something that was a bit different that would carry out beyond us in that sense, right? So
Right.
another way to say it was that we're sort of thinking like, okay, what about maybe a bit of legacy building? And the reason why I use that word is that, I'm now 37, I think. You start losing count after 30, right? And you're not getting younger. And so you
Right.
are having less and less opportunities in that sense, in terms of, your time, your energy, your interests. You sort of have less to go with in that sense, right? So we're thinking like,
Sure.
okay, well, why don't we explore something that is a bit, different in that sense? And I still didn't really arrive at board games yet at that time. And then the third part of this was actually considering how I could do something that could also benefit my kids. Because one of the things that I realized, and I'm sure a lot of parents realize this as well, is that the challenge of screen time is not just for us, it's for the kids. And it's also in
Right.
terms of how do you engage with your kids as they grow up, right? And of course,
Mm.
as a kid, as a boy growing up, I played a lot of games, right? Video games, board
Right.
games, whatever it is, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
I grew up
My
with
gosh, yeah.
StarCraft Brood War. That was one of my favorite
Hmm.
games. Used to play it a lot, even StarCraft 2 when it came out and stuff like that. And a lot of RTSs in general. I've of course played Risk, and like everybody else, I also played Monopoly.
Hmm.
You guys might not know, but it's a very obscure board game.
Oh yeah.
And for me, it came with the realization that we can't really escape from games in that sense, but you can harness the positive aspect of games, right? There's the extreme negative aspect of microtransactions and all the sort of mobile game rubbish that comes up with gacha and stuff like that. But there's certainly a positive side of it that you can focus on. And so those three things sort of coalesced for me to come to a conclusion to say, hey, you know what? This would be something really interesting and unique to go into. And bear in
Mm.
mind, I wasn't someone who knew anything about the industry. I mean, I rediscovered or discovered modern board games a couple of years before that. I didn't know any
Mm.
designer or, like terminologies or like,
Wow.
oh, you're, a deck builder and this and that and how you make a good game and stuff like that. So I was literally starting at the bottom of the barrel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. I did not realize. I'm so glad we started with this.
Cool.
I didn't know how recently
Right.
you had come to the modern
Yes.
gaming hobby. That's incredible. That's incredible. That's great.
I
Yes,
mean,
tell me
yeah.
more.
To give you a bit of context, when I mentioned that I discovered modern board games, there was a period of time where I was buying so many board games. I think I got my wife to play like 80 new board games in a month. That was like at the peak of it. She wasn't happy because it just filled the
No
whole
one
house.
no one understands what that's like, No one buys too many board
Yeah,
games, right?
exactly.
So, hey, let me real quick.
Sure.
What was the first one? What was the first game in the modern hobby when you got into it a few years ago? What was the first game that you bought, and what was the first game you played with your wife?
I want to say it was probably Land versus Sea by Good Games
Yeah.
Publishing.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was something like that, and or King Domino. One of those two. Like it was like a pretty
Okay.
well-known title. I remembered like getting excited, tell my wife, "Hey, you know what? End of the year sale. Why don't we just buy a few?" Little did she know.
88 games later.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I did.
So
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
how did she take to it? So you sit her down to play a
Yes.
game, and
Yes.
did she fall in love like you did, or how did that process
Right.
take place?
So I fell in love with board games, right? And
Yeah.
she fell asleep. That's a bit unfair. I mean, she does enjoy
No.
board games, but she certainly doesn't enjoy anything that's too heavy. So
Okay.
like I love Robinson Crusoe, Spirit Island, Mage Knight, right? I mean, I would
Mm-hmm.
never ever play those sorts of games with her. It would need to be
Okay.
games that I can probably something like Pandemic level is something that she enjoys in terms of a mix of
Okay.
skill and difficulty. So sort of gateway level games. Of course, simpler games she'd be happy to play with as
Right.
well. So
So that
yes,
means that you had to go out and find other gamers in Perth, right?
absolutely. What I did
And
was I spent
yeah.
so much time on Facebook Marketplace, like hunting the best deals.
Right. Yes.
So yeah, I started hooking up with people who happen to have treasure troves or of board games, and they just never have the time to play them. And they're like, okay, you know what? I bought this game. I had a look at it. I'm selling it because a new batch of Kickstarter games are coming. Right? I'm like, okay, sure.
Right.
So yeah, that's yeah.
So, what's the gaming community like now? Is it, I imagine it's more vibrant than what people would expect.
So I can speak for Perth since I was a bit
Right.
active up until I wasn't as, but there are definitely a few different, I guess, major groups. There's the WABA, which is West Australian Board Game Association. That's probably the biggest one or most active, that's well known. There's
Hmm.
one local one near mine called Meeples, Decks, and Dice, or MDD. Shout out to them if they ever see this. And there are a few other ones close by and local. They're small, but I think they try and be active in terms of getting a group together and just start playing. There are definitely a healthy and very active community. Certainly, it's difficult in the sense that we're far away from everyone, Australia, and then Perth specifically. But I think in that sense, Perth has built its own resilience in saying, you know what, that's okay. It's cool if we're not allowed to join the cool kids. We'll just make our own group and our own club.
So, I'm listening to and I'm looking up a few stats about Perth
Sure.
because I have to admit I don't know a lot about Perth, but I knew where it was located and
Right.
whatnot. It says it's got 2.3 million people.
Yep.
So it's a pretty substantial city. So I imagine that, just statistically, there's a substantial group of gamers. And how many board game cafes or local board game stores exist in the area?
There are a few board game. I'm not sure if cafe is the right word, but certainly, I guess retail shops that have just
Okay.
spaces for people to play. I'm not too sure about cafes specifically, but there are at least let me see, Good Games Cannington over this area, Good Games Rockingham down south. There might be a few more up north. So I'm sort of down south of the river, and there's further south, and then I guess further up north is where there are a lot more communities probably, but it's a bit too far for me to travel on a regular basis.
How often do you and your local game group, do y'all get together and game?
So they get together around twice a month, and when I was active,
Okay.
I did join that, and then obviously once I started working on games, that sort of tanked as I spent all my time just designing and prototyping and playtesting instead of actually playing like a normal person.
Sure. Well, how about gaming conventions? Like obviously here in the United States, we've got Origins and
Yeah.
Dice Tower and Gen Con. England has UKGE, Essen in Germany.
Right.
Is there maybe not comparable in size?
Mhm.
Obviously, Essen takes the cake.
Right.
But so last
Sure.
weekend's a
Sure.
perfect example. I was in Nashville, Tennessee.
Mhm.
It was a small gaming convention of
Right.
about 700. There was another one going on in Nebraska
Right.
that was about the same size. There was
Okay.
another one up north of us in Milwaukee that was about maybe 1,000. Are there little gaming gathering conventions like that in
Yeah.
your area?
Definitely. I
Okay.
mean, there's in Perth, there's probably Pixel Expo. I want to say is probably the biggest one, and that happens once a year, sometime in October. Nationally, in Australia, there are a few more over east. PAX Australia is probably the biggest one, but there's also, I think, if I got it right, CanCon and Board Game Barbecue also have their own. It might be one or two more, but yeah, it's sort of spread out around the year, and so we've got a few going on, and they, from what I can see, certainly make an effort to also highlight and feature local designers as well. And it's not just about convention for board gamers, but also to highlight local talents as well.
Okay, cool. So how often do you get out to Sydney?
Probably never.
Okay.
It's definitely a bit of a distance, and
Sure.
I went to Melbourne for PAX Australia 2 years ago, and that was the only time that I did go there effectively for a convention. So I haven't gone to any since, and I think it's always at least for someone in Perth, it's always a question of, well, what's the trade-off? Like, are you just going there just to go for fun,
Right.
which is cool, but if you're going there to sell things, then you gotta either way you gotta manage your finances and budget as well. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we all have the same concerns. Absolutely. So you're working on you said that you became a little bit inactive because you started designing and playtesting games. So I know you've got a game coming out but I don't know if you have anything before that. So talk to us more about what pulled you away from the gaming community and into design?
Sure. So the biggest enjoyment as a designer, at least I can say personally, this may not be representative of all game designers, is the creative aspect of curating an idea or concept and distilling it
Yeah,
into an experience that have these really great moments and you want someone else to discover them, right? But to get to that point, it really is, I guess, polishing a piece of marble with, I don't know, the most horrible piece of rag because it just takes forever, right?
right. Yes.
Yeah. I spend easily 40 plus hours every week when I started like working on just different designs. And the first design that I did when I officially started was for a BGG contest, a board game geek contest. And I think it was for like a 9 card game, right? And this 9 card game I spent, I don't know, it was a lot of hours, like just for a 9 card game. And I learned a lot from doing that. But yeah, just the whole experience of trying to figure it out, and at the same time, like what materials, what tools do you start using? Like I was trying to figure so many things on top of learning about game design as well. So that's why for me
Sure.
it was just so all consuming that I pretty much didn't have time to do anything else.
So how many games have you designed total? Yeah.
So in terms of prototyping, I prototyped 30 plus games in my first year.
Yep.
And then
First
first
year.
year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But out of those, one of them was selected for PAX Australia, which was a Farmhouse Frenzy. And I went on to try and pitch that to several dozen publishers after that. But then the year after, which is last year, I came up. I think I worked on probably 15 different designs, and a few of them I ended up, getting self-published effectively. One of them I have it here is actually Tiny Games with the Murmuring Mystic. So it's actually
Oh,
a small game, well, 2 games in one. There's actually a third game, another booklet. I don't have it with me, but they specialize, these guys, Murmuring Mystic, Az and Frank, brother and sister team. They specialize in basically magazine-sized games that you can just buy and then play at home straight away. You might need a couple of dice, maybe some pencils, but it's something really simple and easy for you to do. The games in here, number one is Dice and Steward, which is about creating a combo of points in cooking your stuff, but not overcooking it.
nice.
And then Silverbeard's successor is a game about trying to hide your treasure in different spots, but also trying to guess where other people are hiding their treasure and stealing theirs, right? So and then there's another one, which is Blades of Belcrest, which is a cooperative defend your town against invaders and monsters. And I also had Anything You Can Do with Ryan Cross, and that's a party game where you're trying to do a little bit of light physical challenges plus a bit of trivia within like a set time limit, and that quantity in terms of the challenges increases with each player, and so who will break as it builds up, kind of stuff. So I've worked on a few small games, and each one effectively became a bit of a bigger project, right? And all of my projects are very characteristic in the sense that, or almost all of them, that I try and have another designer that I work with and collaborate with. I find that
Okay.
that helps to accelerate your learning and also to challenge your own biases about what works well and what doesn't, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. As a playtester, I can say that resonates.
hmm,
I Sometimes you hit resistance. You get a designer who's so married to their game
right.
and they're so married to their idea and they want a fresh perspective, but when it's
Yes.
not what they want to hear,
Yes.
and it's not like we as playtesters are trying to be rude. We're just trying to
Right.
help you because
Yes.
we believe in
Yes.
the game. And then others take a fresh perspective and they're like, tear it apart,
Right. Yes.
So
Yes.
it's interesting, but you need it. You
Yes.
absolutely need that collaboration. I totally agree. That's incredible. So after Anything You Can Do came what?
So that after I worked on that, I mean, I was still working on other designs on the side. So that's when I started focusing on Usolli, which was the game
Okay.
that just got out a month ago, basically. Well, now it's April, so 2 months ago. It was in February that it was launched.
And so for our listeners, this is the game you've been waiting to hear
Yeah.
about, right?
Right, right, right.
This is the game. So here's interesting story, because let's contextualize while our relationship is new,
Sure.
how we met.
Yeah.
So my good friend Laura, who is at Obsessed with Board Games
Yeah.
on Instagram, she got a review copy of your game,
Yes.
or she introduced us.
Yes. Yes.
And she's like, you guys need to, because she introduced me to Palgan in India. That's
Yes.
how he came on
Yes.
the show. So,
Yes.
so Laura, thank you
Yes,
once
Laura.
again.
Thank you.
Um, she's going to be on the show next week,
Oh,
so we're
nice.
going to be talking about community. So it's going to be
Awesome.
exciting. But yeah, so that's how we met, and she was like, "You're a perfect fit," and I wanted to hear your story.
All right.
Like, I'm really interested in both your story as a gamer,
Sure.
as a designer, and then I want to hear about Usolli.
Yes. Solid.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So is it on Kickstarter, or has it fulfilled,
It's
or
finished.
is
Yeah. I
where are
mean,
we at?
it's probably
Finished.
95% fulfilled. There are just, I
Okay.
think, 4 or 5 people who seem to not want their game. I've like emailed them,
Okay.
I've messaged them, and for whatever reason they haven't gotten back to me. So,
If they don't want it, I'll take it.
well, there you go. Just give me your address after this, right? I'll just mark it as fulfilled. But yeah, if you're listening to this and you're waiting for your copy, please get back to me.
Get back to him right away. Otherwise, I'm going to get your copy.
That's it.
So tell us about Usolli. This game is just, I don't know that I think theme wise, there's nothing like it on the market. Not in the West, I don't think. And it just seems really interesting, and I'd like to hear more. Yeah. So tell us about it.
I had the box here just now. I don't know if it showed up, but there it is. So Usolli is actually pretty small.
It is a small, yeah.
A lot smaller than a lot of people expect. So they're like, oh, that's actually really small. I thought in the picture maybe it's just a leaflet, not the actual game. But anyway, here it is. That's the game. So Usolli.
So for those of you who are listening and not watching this, because I've got a lot of Spotify listeners,
right?
The box is rather small.
Yes.
But it's like it's the blue sky, and it's matted, but you've got a beautiful glossy finish over. What is that? Is that the?
That's a
is that the image?
It's a. Moss.
It's a generic? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it might have been the Hagia Sophia.
Right.
In Turkey, but I wasn't sure. Okay, so it's a mosque.
Yeah.
All right, it's beautiful. But the artwork is amazing. So yeah, so that's what he's holding up. It's not a very big. You could easily travel with this.
Yes. Maybe not in your pocket.
Absolutely. No, it won't fit in your pocket, but it will fit in your backpack when you're going to PAX Australia.
Yeah, that's it.
That's a plug for PAX Australia. If they'd like to host Meeple to Meeple and fly us down, we're ready to go.
Nice. No, for sure. So the story with Usolli was that as I was developing lots of different ideas and concepts and prototypes, obviously creating something that has close association with your personal values and identity is very powerful, because you can pull your personal experiences. It's very authentic.
Yes.
But with Islamic games, okay, just to give context for anyone not aware, Usolli has a religious theme. It's about the 5 daily Islamic prayers, or salah, and you're basically trying to do them throughout the day. But the thing is that this game is not a religious game, which means that you don't need to be Muslim. You don't need to know anything about Islamic prayers in order to play the game. Everything is revealed to you as you read the rules and understand the terminology and play the game. And I can vouch for that, because I have a lot of people who basically come from that. A lot of the, especially reviewers who are non-Muslim, they just learn from the game and figure out how it works. Like, I didn't need to tell them anything. Say, hey, look at this Wikipedia page or whatever. So all the thing is there, right? But when I was developing, not even Usolli yet, but in my first year, I actually tried to explore some Islamic concepts to try to make as games. And I had some reflection about, well, what is it about Islamic games that, where are they in terms of the landscape right now? And when I look back from my own experiences, I know my parents did try to, find Islamic themed games as we were growing up. But I knew personally that a lot of them weren't really fun. And the reason is they tend to focus on trivia as the primary mechanism. And so if you knew the answers already, you're going to win the game. And if you don't, well, you're going to not have a great time. And there wasn't much more beyond that. Sure, there's an educational aspect, but as a game, there weren't really games in that sense. So that's one of the things that for me was like I wanted to make a game that was a game first, right? And the theme was something
Yes.
that was baked in. So not the other way. Not that, oh, it's such a
Right.
great theme, but it's not an actual game that you can play, right? So that was for me a really important distinction. The second thing was that with religious topics, or I guess any topics that, there's like the difference between fact and fiction is obvious. Like you can't make things up. You have to follow certain things, right? There
Right.
is
Absolutely.
a great difficulty in trying to find theme and mechanisms that match and marry together.
Yep.
So we went through quite a lot of different sort of prototypes and concepts, and it was like sometimes we'll find a cool concept, and then we couldn't find a good mechanic for it, and sometimes it was the other way around. I had a concept about trying to create an astrolabe, for example, and it was giving you directions, and it was really cool as a mechanic, but it didn't work quite well when you tried to play it. And so after
that's too bad because that sounds really cool.
Well, just you wait, because something might eventually surface, but I'm not going to say anything yet for now. Until later. After so many, trial and error, I actually paused on Usolli for a while because we just couldn't find something that worked. So at this point, we actually didn't have Usolli as a game yet, I guess, in that sense. Like, we knew we wanted to have this theme eventually. Like, after different prototypes, we were like, okay, this is a theme that we want to focus on. But we just couldn't find a way to make it work that would make it fun. And so I paused in that and said, okay, that's cool. It is what it is. Let's find other things to work on. And I had another game, which is about the water crisis in sub-Saharan Africa, right? And so you're trying to build wells in order, as a village folk, effectively, like as a community, and trying to build these wells to produce clean water access, which then demonstrates how that access will provide better future for the next generation and all that. Just as a side note, based on what I mentioned earlier, my considerations going into this, I was very conscious to want to try to pursue games and themes that focused on positive impact and a bit of reflection on the player's side. So it wasn't just like, okay, here's a fun game and that was it. Like I want to try and see, okay, is there a sort of deeper layer that I can engage the players? So anyway, back to that water game. The theme was cool. The mechanic that I had in there eventually was okay. And I actually thought, you know what, this might work better in Usolli. So I actually ported that system from that game and then moved it to Usolli. And then when we played it, we were blown away because it worked so well. Like, it just made sense with the theme in mind. And for those of you who know the game, very well known, Splendor, right? We had some inspiration from that as well. And you will probably notice that in this, how there's, like a grid of cards and stuff like that. But yeah, we, worked on that. And then that sort of set the ball rolling, because once we found that core mechanic that worked really well with the theme, then it was just focused on refining it, finding a suitable artist to, work on the art. I knew personally that the art could not have a strong religious representation in the sense of, I guess it makes sense if I say like someone holding a cross, right? Like, that is a very strong kind of representation, which may make some people like, oh, I don't want that sort of game, that sort of thing, right? Like in here, you don't have any image of someone praying with prayer beads or holding the Quran or that sort of stuff, right? It's all very focused on architectural art, effectively. So very neutral and approachable art in that sense.
Okay.
And so it was really so many different, I guess, bits of conscious decision around how this game should be made in regards to the audience that would play it. And speaking of that, that's actually another interesting challenge, because I knew that I wanted to create a game that had some depth, which means it needed some complexity, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And for the board game community, this game is considered a light filler game. For them, it's like, you know what, I can learn it in like 10 seconds and we'll play it. Yeah. But for the vast majority of the Muslim community, they are not familiar with board games and with modern board games, right? They're familiar with things like, again, Monopoly, maybe Scrabble, right? Like a really, really simple games, Uno. And so for them, they expect, we will just learn the game in 2 minutes and we'll already know it, or like it needs to play like Uno for us to play it. So there
Mhm.
was definitely a bit of concern and sort of hesitation around that.
Right.
And at the same time, again, because of the religious theme, there was also hesitation around how it would be accepted outside of the Muslim communities. We're sort of like, are we really creating this game? Like, is this gonna be like a pariah where nobody actually likes it?
That was so, in full disclosure, that was my initial reaction when Laura first told me about the
Yeah.
game. I was like, "What?
Yes.
What?" And then I was like, "Tell me more."
Yes.
Yeah. So how was Usolli received by the Muslim community when you introduced it to them?
So you have to sort of split it into layers because, again, we're
Sure.
not a monolith, just like board gamers are not a
Right.
monolith.
Absolutely.
There are those
Right.
that are good at playing heavy games or not. But with the Muslim community, I mean, there's an intersection, particularly, I guess I would say, the younger generation. It could be 30 plus, could be younger as well, maybe young parents. And they are aware and they do enjoy playing modern board games, right? And so
Okay.
for them, when they see this, like they connect the dots and they're like, OMG, that is amazing because it's something that represents my identity positively,
Right.
right? Especially in regards to the sort of global climate on things.
Right.
But
Right.
also, it's a fun game.
Mm,
So it's like,
that's incredible.
that's right. So for the Muslim community who are gamers, they love it, right? For the Muslim
Right.
community who are not gamers, there is a bit of a bridge to cross
Okay.
over, right? Because you need to teach them the game for them to
Right.
understand it first. But once they understand it, I mean, they're like blown away because there is, I
Right.
can safely say, literally nothing else like this, like in terms of how this theme is implemented, right?
Mm.
So far, very positive reception.
Any pushback at all? Did you encounter any resistance?
I think the probably immediate concern is that
Sure.
how accurate is this from again
Right.
Muslim community, and it's a natural thing to ask because you're talking about one of the 5 core pillars of the religion, right? And it's like, well,
Right. Yeah.
are you doing justice, or did you decide to just like, nah, I'm gonna mash things up? And it's, hey, if someone learns this, they're just like, nope, that's not the right way.
Right.
So
Right.
that was a big initial concern for some people when they saw the game. But also similar to that, there are some Muslim countries who are more stringent in terms of religious
Mm,
content, like
sure.
Saudi or Brunei, where you need to pass your content through their religious department first before you can do
Right.
anything else legally. And so, I
Right.
mean, those are just, it is what it is. It's an it is what it is situation. It's not a problem, of course. But yeah, that's the sort of immediate concerns that come up with regards to creating such a game like this.
Is there a substantial or vibrant Islamic community in and around the greater Perth area?
There's definitely, I guess, a big general community. What I would say is that there are probably more active or focused sub communities depending on where they're originally from. For
Right.
example, Pakistani community, Indian community, or Malaysian or Singaporean and all that. I mean, obviously we have meets and gatherings, where we do connect with each other. But I think there's a little bit of a comfort in a particular culture that you've grown up in, which you will
Mm-hmm.
generally associate
Sure.
more with, which is just it's not limited to religion, pretty much anything else like
Right.
nationality and all that. You go like, hey, I'm gonna hang with people who grew up the same way I grew up, right? That sort of thing.
Right. So, did you, in terms of spreading the word for Usolli, was it just in the local Muslim communities in around your area? Did you manage to break out into predominantly Muslim countries? If you did,
Mhm.
how did you achieve that?
Sure. So with Usolli, when I knew it was time to start marketing this, which was sometime in late last year, right? Like I knew I was going to go into full production and stuff like that.
Right.
Um, I started basically just Googling up and searching up, hey, are there Muslim communities around board game design? And this is one of the things that I was very active in when I started in this industry, which is to actively connect with designers, just designers, right? I would be like, hey, are you okay if I just have a chat with you and learn from you, your
Yeah.
journey, your challenge and stuff? So I was no stranger to just reaching out and connecting with people
Right.
across the globe. And with Usolli, I started doing that for Islamic board game design. Now, the thing is, from my research, no such community existed.
You're
So I
right.
was like, okay, well, if there are none, I'll just create one. And so I created an online community, right? And then we slowly sort of grew larger and organically other designers. Literally, I have someone from Turkey, a few from the US, another guy here in Australia, a few in Southeast Asia. And so it was just slowly connecting them together and just saying, hey guys,
Hmm.
it is a solitary experience in some design, but we should try and
Yeah.
connect because of the themes that we're working on are similar in scope, right? So I actually focused a lot on international reach. And in fact, locally, it's only now that I'm starting to reach out to sort of local communities and events in
Okay.
terms of Muslim communities and all that. I think it was more the fact that I knew that this product was a game first instead of a religious material first.
Right.
That it was easier to connect with communities that were game focused or understood the value of that game component. You didn't have to sell in that sense. They were like, okay, we understand it's a really, really cool game compared to
Right.
it's a game, so what?
Sure. So I want to ask about a little bit more about the game itself. There is, and to be fair, Laura prompted me on some of these questions
Sure.
because she has a copy of the game.
Right.
Apparently, there's a normal and an advanced mode
Yes.
in Usolli.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that. Why the two modes?
Right.
How do they operate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, there are three modes, right? There's basic, advanced, and solo mode. And solo, you can use either of the difficulty levels, right? And the reason for that, number one, again, this is a game first. Like I knew with modern board games, solo modes are really popular. I'm a solo gamer. I love playing solo games as well. So for me, initially I thought, you know what, this game doesn't need it, right? But then I thought, but that actually strengthens the value proposition as a game if I have that solo mode. But with the basic and advanced mode, it was again recognition that some people who start playing this game may have difficulty in trying to absorb everything in one go. So it's better to scaffold the strategic choices and the rules in terms of a basic and advanced mode. Again, not to say that the basic is super easy for someone who's only familiar with Uno and all that, but it does, break it down a little bit to make it a bit more graceful for your first time. Instead of saying, here are 100 different rules, it's more like, here are 50 rules only.
Right. So it sounds like it initially didn't have a solo mode. I feel like I was listening to you talk about that for a minute, and I was like, it seems natural for a game that is about the daily prayers, which is a very solitary event spiritually, for there to be a solo mode in this game.
Right.
I'm like, of course. So I have to ask, how does it play at two players? Have you and your wife sat down and played it? How's that experience? And I ask because my wife and I play a lot of games, so we look at the two-player aspect.
Yeah. So my wife is, my number one playtester, whether she likes it or not. Right. For all of my prototypes and all that. So we definitely played a lot of this, the two players. The thing is with the solo, I mean, it's interesting you highlighted about that solo aspect. Like it seems obvious. So with when we were designing this, right? Again, she gave a lot of input and feedback, which is why I'm saying we, even though her name is not on there, but it should be. So.
Well, you need to change that soon.
I need to change that. That's right. Otherwise, I'm going to be in the doghouse.
Right.
But we actually wanted to, or at least we tried to, make a game that was cooperative rather than competitive.
Okay.
Right. So we were like, you know what? Based on the theme, we wanted something that would get people together and get them to have something that they can positively share and stuff like that. What we found out was that a cooperative game is slightly more complicated than a competitive game because you have to add on those layers to say, hey, be nice to each other. Hey, here are some goals for you to work together. But a competitive game is like, everybody understands that. Like, I want to win. I'm going to beat you.
Yes.
So again, in terms of making sure it was a game first, we decided, okay, it's going to, focus on the competitive aspect. And so at a 2-player count and at 3-player count, this is where the game plays best at effectively.
Okay.
Because some of the feedback, especially from reviewers, is that the game plays really, really quickly at a 4-player count. And the reason why is because the number of turns don't really change regardless of the player count. That means that a larger player count is never less. And it's a very simple reason. I wanted to keep the game a certain duration and not to take longer than that, right? And of course, for gamers, they'd be like, no, we want it to be perfectly balanced at different skill levels. But this is one of the things that, as a designer, I had to make that decision to say, well, what is more important as part of the package, in order to respect the theme and the intended audience and stuff like that. But, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it plays better at 3.
2 or 3 players is basically the
2 or 3.
Yeah.
And at 4 players, it's too fast. That's interesting. Typically, games tend to be the more players, the longer the game takes.
Yeah.
Even a quick game.
Right.
That is fascinating. That is fascinating. Wow. I can't wait.
Cool.
I wanna play. This is exciting.
Nice.
So are there any future plans for larger gaming conventions or opportunities in Western Australia that are in the works now that you know about?
You mean events being planned and all, or?
Yeah, just, anything because you mentioned, is it Wagga,
Waba?
right?
Waba.
Waba.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
No, it's all good.
Waba.
It's all good.
Right.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if the amount of gamers in Western Australia were growing,
right,
and that there was a possibility for larger conventions coming to Perth,
right.
say,
so
that you knew about.
Well, I mean, to put it simply, as far as I know, there are none. And here's something really interesting. There are government funding in the gaming industry here, but it is exclusively for video games. They make it very clear that it cannot be a board game. It cannot be a hybrid video/board game. It has to be board game only. So
wow.
So that's number one. And then even in terms of sort of the arts funding, like I've tried to sort of reach out about that. They're also like, oh, this is not art. Like in their definition of art.
Sure.
So there's some limitation in terms of funding. So as and until there is acceptance of what board game means for those people, I think it will still be a bit limited in terms of the access here. I think over East there are a lot more initiatives just because of the larger population of gamers and all that, and therefore access to funds is going to be a bit easier. The audience is already there and stuff like that. But I can certainly say that in Perth, in Western Australia, it is growing. Even for the designers in Western Australia, like we keep finding new ones. Because I organize the monthly meetup sessions here, and we're always like, every now and then, hey, somebody new pops up, and like they're like, I've been doing this for 5 years, just in my
where have you been?
Yeah, exactly. So we're there, we're in the dozens.
Right, the dozens. You are the dozens. I love that. So do you have? I probably already know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you have any plans? Tangible plans, not just dreams, of coming to either the UK or the United States to some of these larger conventions to introduce yourself, introduce Usolli to the gaming community, everything like that?
I definitely want to do that. I don't know when. That's a really good question. And again, finances being one thing, but I think it's also trying to figure out ways of reaching people across the globe without necessarily being there physically. As a case in point, Usolli actually got picked up by PAX East, right, which is in America.
Yes,
yes,
it is.
So they have, I believe, a first look section. So
good.
Dan Turot of Space Fame did a review of the game. Right, and then someone from there saw it, and then they're like, "Hey, this is really cool in terms of how engaged the theme seems to be and all that. Like, we want to feature it, right?" And so Sully is traveling to the US
but not you,
because it is so small, right? But not me, not this time at least. I do hope to make it one day because it is so fascinating to see just the sheer size and scope of that. I was actually in Germany a few months back at the Nuremberg Toy Fair, so that's probably the closest that I got.
Sure, but still, that's a significant event.
Yeah, it was. Okay. I was trying to basically connect with potential retailers and just potential partners to work with in Europe. Again, this was a time where actually the game still wasn't quite out. It wasn't out yet, so I was still sort of. It was a weird kind of situation to be in. It's like this game hasn't come out, but hey, I'm here to
Right.
connect with people about it, especially as an an
Yeah.
unknown designer and stuff like that. But yeah, look, I'm no stranger to reaching out and connecting with people. So
Yep.
I hope to be able to do that one day with the American board gaming community. I
Right.
think there's some exciting sort of things that I can learn and explore and just connect and see how communities in their work and hopefully bring some of that here to Perth, Australia as well.
So you definitely, if you haven't already done this, you should probably reach out to Palgan and
Right.
Mosaic Games and in India, because
Okay.
he's coming to Gen Con this year.
Right.
So he can at least help you figure out the finances of how to get right. Like, so I can't even imagine. My international travel has only ever been to England,
Right.
so I can't even imagine flying around the world. Like, that's incredible. That's the dream, right? I mean, that's a tagline for our whole podcast: is we're trying to unite players around the world. So
That's it.
it's surprising how quickly I've gotten used to the time zone differentiate. Like, that's a conversation I have with everybody. So where are you? Yeah, you're
Yes.
this many hours this way or that way,
Right.
right? Whatever.
Right.
So that's incredible. Yeah. I mean, thank you. Thank you for coming on. This was great.
No
This was amazing. I look forward to more chats with you as our relationship continues. I can't wait to play Usolli. That's just exciting. Where can people find you on social media if they have questions for you or they missed the campaign and they want to get a copy after listening to this?
Sure. You can find me almost anywhere online these days. Facebook, not Twitter. You can find me not Twitter because Twitter does not exist at this point. But
That is correct.
Board Game Geek. I'm also on there. If you search up Usolli on Board Game Geek and post something there, I'll be sure to find it. On Instagram as well. I think those are pretty much the main ones that I have the time and energy to invest in. But yeah, just
absolutely
look up Usolli wherever you find it. Just and you see my name, then you can just send me a message. I'd be very happy to connect. Oh, and on LinkedIn, I'm also on there. So there you
go. Okay, and that is Usolli is Usolli,
yes,
correct?
Yes.
So,
Perfect.
y'all gotta go look this up. This game. And now that I've seen the box, like, see how small it is, man. At least I can go an hour south to St. Louis, hang out with Laura. She could teach me the game. So I'll probably pressure her next week.
Nice
for that.
Nice.
Ahmad, thank you. Thank you so much. Sincerely. Guys, don't forget to like and smash that subscribe button. Leave comments below for Ahmed and myself, Spotify, YouTube. Guys, the YouTube channel is slowly making progress. Spotify and all the other podcast channels are doing well. So thanks, and keep tuning in. And Ahmad, thanks again.
Cool. Thank you. Have a good day, man. See ya.
All right.